Today I'm looking at a lovely new book by Helen Hanson. It's Nature in Ink and Coloured Pencil, and it's just been published by the Crowood Press in 2025. It's a paperback with 160 pages. Now, I've previously shown Helen's other book, Landscape in Ink and Coloured Pencil. This was described by the publisher as suitable for beginners, but some people disagreed with this. So I do think this new book is more beginner friendly, but it probably is more suitable for someone who's gained some basic skills and confidence and who's ready to expand on those skills. Now, Nature and in Ink and Coloured Pencil looks at different environments in the natural world. It shows you mark making techniques using ink and dry coloured pencil. Now, the author does state this is not a step-by-step guide. Each chapter starts with an introduction to the environment and a detailed exercise with steps, and Helen then talks about the plants and wildlife you may find and how she creates the images. Now, look out for the little blue boxes with the learning points, and the chapters finish with examples of students' work. So the important bit now is to open the book and have a look inside. So we start with some lovely images, and we have the contents with introduction, materials, techniques, woodland, farmland, meadowland, wetland, heathland, mountain and moorland, coastline, island, and the index. So the introduction by Helen, and we move on to chapter 1, materials. So the first thing Helen talks about is the papers, the pens and inks, a choice of inks, different types of pen, alternative mark making equipments, and then we move on to coloured pencils, how to choose them. Now, Helen does suggest Faber-Castell Polychromos for your starter selection, and she has some additional tools such as embossers and blenders and burnishers and erasers. And then we move on to chapter 2, the techniques. And Helen says here, preparation increases confidence, and she recommends starting your work in a sketchbook, which is always a good thing to do. Then we have mark making in ink with lines and dots, squiggles, scrawls and random markings. And then we move on to coloured pencil with ellipses and hatching, layering and blending. So we've got all the basic stuff there and some burnishing. We then have the additional techniques of embossing and lifting out. Look at that lovely shell there. Beautiful. And then we have chapter 3, woodland. So we have the introduction to the habitat, the learning points, and then we have the step-by-step detailed instructions here, so that you can follow this demonstration if you want. Beautiful, lovely detail in there. We move on to some other birds, woodland flowers, fungi, and the woodland floor. So we've got some leaves here through the seasons. We finish up with student images. Then we move on to chapter 4, farmland. Again, we start off with the demonstration, the learning points, lovely little fox here. And then we have a weasel, a mouse, birds' eggs and moths. And then we have autumn berries. And we finish again with student images. Then we move to chapter 5, meadowland. So we start in this chapter with butterflies, the demonstration with the step-by-step instructions. Some more butterflies there, insects, meadow grasses, flowers, and student images. Then we have chapter 6, wetland. And we start here with amphibians and a step-by-step of a frog. The photographs are very clear, it's very easy to see the details, and the steps all to me seem very easy to follow. We then have a grass snake here, wetland flowers, and wetland insects. Some beautiful details here. So we've got a damselfly and a dragonfly there. And then we have the wetland birds. And again, student images. Chapter 7, Heathland. And we start with reptiles with an adder. Lizards, heathland birds, heathland flowers, and the student images. And then we move on to chapter 8, mountain and moorland, and we start here with a demonstration of mountain flowers. Then we have mountain birds, lots of close-up details here. Mountain berries, rushes, and again the student images. And then we have chapter 9, coastline, and we start with coastal birds for the demonstration. And we have coastal flowers, shells, shore life, and student images. Then we move on to island. So we have lots of little islands around the UK, and we have a step-by-step project here. Lots of different images in there. Some flowers again, island birds, rock pool, and that's the end with the index. And we can see there on the back we've got the first book that I mentioned. So that is Helen's book. Now, I do love this book. I really love working with ink and dry coloured pencil. It's a technique I've used for many years. So I really enjoy reading this book and seeing how Helen goes about this. Now, there are longer passages of reading, so it may be more difficult for visual learners to follow, especially if they're used to step-by-step guides where the information is broken down into simple steps with lots of photo reference. But I do think that anyone who would love to work in nature with ink and coloured pencil would love to read this book because it's so inspiring. The illustrations are beautiful and it is an easy read once you get into it. I do find it's so fascinating. It's lovely to hear how Helen works and how she masters all these different techniques. So I think anyone would be inspired by it, so don't be put off if you're a complete beginner, because it's lovely to have something to aspire to work towards. And there's nothing like having a book of beautiful illustrations, especially when it's a subject that you really love. So that's Nature in Ink and Coloured Pencil by Helen Hanson. I hope you will enjoy having a look at this book. And don't be put off by the first book thinking it's too hard, because as I said, anyone can read any book and be inspired, even if you are not working at the level that that book is suitable for. So we have two lovely books by Helen. I've got a review that I did of her first book, and I will try and link that below for you in the description box.